Welcome to Washington in Focus. I'm Brett Davis. Joining me today is the Center Square's investigative reporter, TJ Martinell. You recently authored a story headlined, Washington Voters Can Soon Register Online with Partial Social Security Number. This has to do with a bill passed during this year's legislative session, Senate Bill 5208. Can you tell us about that? It seems like they're making it really easy, maybe too easy to register to vote in Washington state.
Yeah, so currently there's a presumptive right to vote in Washington state. And what that means is you really don't have to provide any direct verification to any government agency to prove that you're eligible to vote when you're registering. All you have to do is provide your name, your address, and attest that you are legally allowed to vote or eligible to vote, and then sign your signature. And that's pretty much it. What this bill does is it allows you to register online with just the last four digits of a social security number. Now, they say, your social security number, but there's no way to verify that the number you're providing is your number or that you even know what the full social security number is. All you need is the last four digits. And then you provide an electronic signature that's used to verify and compare with your ballot signature, because ballot signatures and your signature for registering are used to compare to verify that the same person who signed the ballot matches with the person who registered to vote.
So what's the thinking behind this? I mean, why are they making it so easy to register to vote? Is there a problem registering to vote now? I mean, why do this?
Well, it depends on who you ask.
I'm sure it does.
The proponents say it makes it easier for young people to register to vote before they're eligible, but just like pre-registering. That way they're automatically registered to vote when they turn 18. Other people say there's a lot of problems with this. One of the issues that they bring up is, one, social security numbers are not considered legitimate individual identifications. The Social Security Administration even says that. It says that it is not, quote, a personal identifier because it lacks systematic assignment to every person and the means to authenticate a person's identity. So the Social Security Administration is itself saying this alone is not enough to authenticate someone's identity. And ironically enough, the Social Security, if you're old enough, your Social Security card will say that it's not meant to be used as a personal identifier.
And yet the legislature took this course of action anyway. Interesting.
Right. And then also you just have to provide an electronic signature, which is going to be different from a person's actual handwritten signature on a piece of paper. So then there's also just the issue of cybersecurity. I mean, you're entering in Social Security, the last four digits of a Social Security number. Another point that somebody brought up during the debates on the legislative floor is that what you could have is a bunch of people in other states register to vote using their own Social Security numbers and electronic signatures, and then they would just send the ballots to a relative who they would register with an address that belongs to a relative of theirs in Washington state. All the ballots arrive to that person's home. That person fills out all the ballots and then sends them, and there's no way to verify whether or not they are legitimate.
I was going to say the state would be none the wiser, correct?
Well, and here's another thing. How do you prosecute?
That's a good question. Anyone have any answers to that question, or nope, just dangling out there still?
Yeah, because they're violating the law, but they're not violating the law in Washington state. So you'd have to have somebody in, let's say, Virginia. You'd have to have the Attorney General in Virginia or whichever agency has jurisdiction. They'd have to go after them.
Is there any chance of this running afoul of any federal laws? Or
I haven't heard of any calls for legal action, but this may cause some issues. Where what happens when your Social Security number is used to register to vote? Somebody else uses it. And that can raise a lot of interesting questions. Or more importantly, what happens when there's a cybersecurity issue, there's a cyber attack and the information is compromised? Who's liable? And there's going to be, the thing is the law doesn't take effect until next year. So it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out and if there's any legal ramifications for it, or if there's any legal action taken in court saying, you can't just use your Social Security number to register to vote.
This is an interesting timing for this law, given all the concerns about election integrity, across the nation, especially in light of some of the, maybe questionable voting laws some states passed, under the cover of the pandemic. They early voting, and they expanded absentee ballot programs. And I say some states are trying to make that a permanent part of their election system. So it's just interesting that they would, here in Washington, we make it even easier than it already is to register to vote. Seems like it could be ripe for abuse.
Yeah, I mean, Washington State used to have voting in person, where you'd have to actually go to a place to vote. And
I'm old enough to remember that.
Yeah, and on top of that, then you have all these different bills that were passed. One of them that limits your ability to obtain public records regarding the election, the voting ballot counting infrastructure, the systems that are used. And then all the questions about the voter database goes to the Secretary of State's office now instead of county auditors. So if you were questioning the outcome of elections, this stuff will add fuel to that fire for some people.
So I guess it's job security for you.
One could put it that way.
And on that note, we look forward to your continued reporting on this issue, which I'm sure will come up again. Listeners can keep up with this story and more at thecentersquare.com. For TJ Martinell, this is Brett Davis. Please subscribe and thanks for listening.